So I think that it's important to stay humble, right? And that's in everything, right? So as a physician, I think it's important for me to remember that I don't know everything. And that's easy for me in real estate because I know for sure I don't know everything. And so I've been around and met a lot of very impressive developers, builders, contractors, designers. And I think it's important to kind of go out into the world with open eyes and say, hey, what is everybody else doing? What can I learn?
Beyond the Blueprint, welcome back to our great episode with Ravi Gandhi, partner at Orlando Surgery Center and owner of Virex Investment Holdings. So as Virex continues, how has medicine transitioned into commercial real estate, whether it's like thought process? I mean, obviously your dad was an architect. So was there ever a desire to get into real estate, or was it like you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and you're like, okay, I need assets?
No, I always kind of had this plan that I was going to have real estate,
Okay.
right? And I didn't really know what that meant. I'll tell you a funny story. One of my first examples, and I'm maybe different than some other doctors because I grew up very differently, right? I grew up at gas stations. I grew up, I spent a lot of time in a trailer park.
Right.
Like I worked with my hands a lot. And so the very, very first house that I owned was while I was a resident. And I started residency with a broken wrist. Okay, so I had one hand in a splint in a cast. And I moved
really good at one
yeah,
hand.
yeah. And so I moved into a house and it had orange walls and green carpet.
Yeah.
Now I had zero money to pay anybody to do anything. So I looked at these walls and I'm like, I can paint these walls. So I painted my entire interior of my house with one hand. So
True grit.
yeah, true grit, right? And then it was this like half bathroom and I'm like, God, this bathroom is really, I'm like, I can change a toilet. I can change the sink. I'm like, let me just do this, right? And so I started pulling up the tile. And so I got a sledgehammer and I'm like breaking up the tile. And it was a really old house. So it had instead of, a baseboard that we have, what do you call it? The cement board, the backer board. Yeah. It had actual like concrete underneath. So I start trying to break up the tile and I'm breaking up this, the subfloor. And then I start swinging harder with the sledgehammer and I make a hole all the way down into the basement. I grew up in Florida. So I forgot about basements, right? I didn't know anything about basements. So now I have a hole all the way into my basement. I'm like, I got to fix this, right? So I fixed it. It took me 2 years to finish this half bathroom. So when I started thinking during residency, I'm like, I got to figure out how to get into real estate. There was a house that came up for foreclosure around the corner from my house. And another resident and I said, hey, let's buy this house and we'll renovate it ourselves, right? Here we are working 100 hours a week. I mean, and that's conservative. We're working essentially 2.5 full-time jobs. And we believe that we're going to buy a house and renovate that house. After it took me 2 years to complete a half bathroom renovation, by the way. Now, luckily, we did not win that auction.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine that I'd still be working on that house right now. But, I think that, you just have to sometimes like get into it and learn it along the way. And that's sort of what we've done. But, medicine, where medicine meets real estate and where medicine has changed because of COVID, obviously we're spreading our kind of tentacles, you could say, further, right? So we say we offer a good service. We offer something that's unique. We've been isolated to Orlando and the immediately surrounding areas. So because of telemedicine becoming this very common thing, people aren't afraid of getting on a video and talking to their doctor. We're spreading out further. We say, hey, we offer the best, in my practice, for example, we offer the best neurosurgical services in Florida. And it's not us saying that. We've been doing it for 20-something years. We spread our access to further places, and so we've opened our first office in Winter Garden. We have an office in Celebration. So, and then each one of those offices spread even beyond that because we'll do televisit for patients all the way out to Claremont, Sarasota, all the way down to Lakeland. And so I think that's a big change in medicine, that we've improved access, not just through physical access, but through digital access.
Right. That geographical growth just continued to grow, and then helped that real estate just to continue to develop. Say, hey, we need an office here. We need an office here
Right.
to meet the needs of those different markets.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned earlier about, you moved to Orlando, and then you started to get really ingrained in some of your networking with businessmen,
Yeah.
or women. How integral was that to your where you're at today in just the business sense, whether it even be in medicine, but also real estate? And like, what are some of those relationships, and what did they look like?
Yeah. So I think that it's important to stay humble, right? And that's in everything, right? So as a physician, I think it's important for me to remember that I don't know everything. And that's easy for me in real estate because I know for sure I don't know everything. And so I've been around and met a lot of very impressive developers, builders, contractors, designers. And I think it's important to kind of go out into the world with open eyes and say, hey, what is everybody else doing? What can I learn from everybody? And I have interacted with either through business transactions or just met socially developers in town that I'm in awe of,
Right.
and I love that, right? I love that feeling of saying, I want to be like this person.
Right.
I have 2 kids, and just this morning, I was talking to my daughter, who's 11 years old. She just started middle school. She's in 6th grade. And I told her, I said, you should find a person, somebody who is impressive to you for whatever reason, right?
Sure.
Either they're a good student or they're a good human being or they do something well. Or you should find a bunch of people who have different attributes and you should try to imitate those attributes. And that's kind of what I've tried to do in real estate. And I say, what has that person done that's impressive to me? What can I learn from that person? I remember after buying a already developed retail project from a local developer, I was in awe of how he handled the transaction, how personally involved he was, as even though he's transacting on probably billions of dollars worth of real estate. This relatively small project to him, he was intimately involved, knew every single detail personally, very impressed by him. And then I thought, hey, I wonder if I can call him and ask him some advice on other projects. And, and I called him and even though he's a, big time developer, obviously he's busy, but when he found the time, he talked to me and gave me advice. And I think that's important, right? And so as I go through this, I hope to acquire knowledge. I'm a baby, I'm an infant in the world of real estate, and I want to learn from as many people as possible. And in that process, you have to choose the right people to learn from.
So let's go into that. How do you choose the right people?
Yeah, I think that's a trickier question.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to get the information people give you, and you have to digest it,
Yeah.
and you have to filter it. And people can do a lot of things, right? And you don't always know what details they're leaving out. So you have to kind of say, this is what my ideal looks like. And maybe this person is very close to that ideal, but he has disadvantage or disadvantage. And this other person has this and that. And you kind of combine and you kind of create your own superhero, right? And that's sort of what I've done, and I've done that in medicine. When I was a kid, I had learned about Ben Carson, and I kind of looked at him and I said, man, I read his book at a young age. And I said, man, this guy came up from nothing and he became so amazing. And then
He ran for president.
yeah, he ran for president, right? And then, and then I met him. I met him well before I was in neurosurgery. And, I realized that he was an amazing person, a great surgeon, but I realized that he was a great surgeon, maybe not the exact kind of surgeon I wanted to be, right? He became a celebrity neurosurgeon. I said, I really don't want to be a celebrity neurosurgeon, right? I don't need to be on TV as a neurosurgeon, right? I just want to take care of the people I take care of. I want to feel a personal connection with my patients. But I learned and I picked attributes from him. And throughout my neurosurgery career, I've met many idols and I've collected information from them. I've emulated certain characteristics. And I try to do that in the real estate world too. And I admire so many people, and there are so many people with knowledge. But again, going back to what I said earlier, nobody knows everything. Nobody's psychic. Nobody has all the answers. And so you just have to keep trying.
Yeah. I tell people that a lot, especially mentorship is obviously very, very important, especially for whatever industry you're in. If you're young, you're trying to learn, but you've got to take into the fact of, people have different experiences in their life. They have different opportunities, and, you got to pick and choose. Like, for instance, I always give the example, like you might have someone that you really admire how great and successful they are in business, right? But their family life might not be too great. And maybe that's a piece that you don't want to emulate, but you want to emulate their business success.
Right.
So you learn from their business strategies.
Right.
Then you find another mentor that maybe he's a great husband, great father, and then you emulate those things. Maybe he sucks in business, right? And then you kind of pick and choose, and you build your own type of persona, if you will, and you use your experiences to continue to develop those traits that you admire in those other individuals.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You think about it and you kind of grow up, and when you're a child, you think about, what do I want to be when I grow up? And really that means, what am I going to do for work? Right? How am I going to make a living? How am I going to feed my family? At least that's what I think we used to think about when we were kids.
Sure.
But there's so many more aspects to it, right? And to be honest with you, I'm 43 years old. Or I'm almost 43 years old. And I still think that so many of those things I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Right. On a day-to-day basis, people will ask me, they're like, I'm one of the busiest neurosurgeons in probably Florida. And I love neurosurgery. No matter how tired I get, no matter what, I always remind myself, this is my dream from when I was in 4th grade.
Sure.
And I'm living my own dream. But I always ask myself, am I the right kind of father? My wife and I were talking about this last night. I'm driving home at 10 o'clock at night. And before she goes to bed, I'm trying to have a conversation with her. And she's telling me, these things and that thing about my daughter. And I'm like, gosh, we really don't know how to be parents, right? There's not a guidebook. And how to be the right parent to your kid is maybe different than how somebody's a parent to their kid. And all of these things, you think about the millions of decisions you have to make and the potential outcomes, we just don't know,
Sure.
right? So all you can do is say, am I a good person, right? And am I doing the things that I believe are the right things to do? And I look at other people and I'm impressed, and not just in real estate or business. And I say, this person is giving back to the world in this way. And I tell myself, I'm like, well, what am I doing to give back? Am I doing all the right stuff? And maybe I need to start doing this. And then at some point, and I have to tell myself this all the time, you can't do everything.
Right.
You can't be the best at everything, and you have to just kind of pick and choose your battles and just constantly ask yourself, am I doing the best I can do at what I do?
Right.
Am I being the person I want to be? Am I true to that person?
Right.
I think that's what we have to do.
Is doing the best you can with what you have.
Exactly.
Right? Just kind of how it boils down.
Yeah, we're all going to make mistakes, no matter how hard you try.
Right. Today's episode is brought to you by Bryce Knuth of Insurance Office of America. As a contractor or real estate owner in Florida, you've likely experienced the impact of rising insurance premiums year after year. With the challenging insurance marketplace, having a specialist who focuses on your industry is critical now more than ever before. If you'd like a second set of eyes on your current insurance program or don't have a relationship with your current broker, please contact Bryce Knuth at 407-697-6944 via call or text, or email bryce.knuth@ioausa.com. Don't let rising insurance costs catch you off guard. Reach out to Bryce today. So let's get into a few questions and then we'll wrap it up. So
Sure.
What does success look like for you?
Now we're getting very philosophical, and just going back to what we were just talking about. I really don't know. I have that question changes for me very regularly, right? I think when I was a child, I used to think about success as a financial success, right? And man, I want a fast car. I want something cool, and I want to drive a cool car. And I used to like to drive really fast. And now I drive and I'm like, man, I got so much work to do. And I'm like, I better not speed because
we got a ticket.
Yeah, I'm going to get a ticket. And oh my gosh, and like, what if I hurt somebody? So, all these things change, right? You ask yourself what really matters, right? And obviously now, like I said, I have kids and I think the most important things that I see, and maybe I have a slightly different perspective because I see people who are at the end of their life a lot. And you hear a lot of people say things that I don't know if this is true, that a lot of people kind of just quote these things. And I don't know where they get it from, but they say nobody on their deathbed says, I wish I spent more time at work, or I did this and that. I wish I spent more time. Everybody says they wish they spent more time with their family, right? And just the neurosurgery part I do, unfortunately, one of the negatives of being a neurosurgeon is that I take a lot of call. I'm in the hospital a lot. But one thing I can tell you that people actually say and actually are thinking about when they're on their deathbed is not so much about where they spent their past, right? It's the future that they're not part of, right? So a lot of people are really thinking about, is my family going to be okay?
Mm-hmm.
Have I taught my kids? Have I been the person that I should have been? And is everybody that I love and I'm going to leave behind going to be okay? And I think that's what matters to me.
Sure.
Right. So I think about it and I say, I don't care if my kids go into medicine or don't go into medicine, if they go into real estate or they become artists, whatever they want. But are they going to be okay?
Right.
Are they going to be good people? Are they going to be positive impacts on the world? Right. And that's all I want. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the hardest part is I can't control that.
You're right.
Right. All I can do is try to leave behind tools and tools are obviously financial is just one tool. But do I give them enough wisdom? Do I give them enough experience? Do I give them enough knowledge and ethics to be good people, to contribute to the world?
Right. So obviously your family is very important to you. Who or what would you say is your inspiration of why you do what you do?
Yeah, so probably my biggest inspiration is my dad, who was also my biggest enemy growing up. He was the person that I would sit in my room and be like, God, what a horrible human being. I hate that guy, because he was an old school liberal, right? He was very different than maybe a traditional Indian dad might have been. He hated the fact that I was going to be a doctor, right? He's like, being a doctor is easy. Why do you want to be a doctor? You should do something that requires you to branch out in the world and do something different. But in the end, he was proud that I became a doctor. And when he was, nearing the end of his life, one of the last things he told me is, I was trying to decide which job to take, and I said, Dad, I could go here and take this job in California, and, this is what they would pay me. This is what it would be like. Or I could take this job in, North Carolina, or I could take this job in Florida. And one of the things he said to me was, take the job that allows you to be the best doctor possible. Everything else will fall in line, but just do the best you can. Take the job that allows you to be the best possible. And as much as my dad kind of was hard on me as a kid and stuff like that, he was a person of integrity. And I think moving forward, integrity is the one principle that I think is most important. You kind of define like, this is okay, this is okay, this is not okay, and you just stick to that.
Sure.
And if I can pass on integrity and honesty to my kids and my future, I think that's the most important thing. And that's something my dad passed on to me. Whether he wasn't always nice, but he lived by principles of integrity. And so part of my real estate, venture is that, honesty and transparency are the most important thing. So I think I mentioned to you, to ask me about the name Virax, right? So Virax came about, the name Virax is Latin for truthful or honest.
Wow.
And that's kind of why I chose that name, right? So I said, it sounds a little bit like a vaccine or something like that, but it's not the prettiest sounding name, but I think it's a principle that no matter how big Virax get, which I hope it gets very big, I hope it survives beyond me, is that it needs to be something of integrity.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So what does the next 5 years look like for you and Virax as you guys continue to grow and develop?
Yeah, and so I haven't mentioned. So one of my good friends and my integral partner in Virax and starting Virax is another gentleman named Javier Miller. He's also a physician in town, and so he and I started Virax together, and we built that medical office building, and we're a really good team. We're both physicians, so we have a really good eye on the kind of medical aspect of it. Recently, I had the good fortune that one of my family members moved to town, and he kind of completes our our base, our foundation. And our idea is this, what I sort of alluded to before, is that we want to kind of branch out a little bit and say, how can we create value in real estate, right? So I think I had mentioned to you that Craig Usler is a local developer who I've watched his development and his principles of development, and I really kind of want to emulate him as best I can. And so the way I've been looking at it is saying, medical office is an asset, retail is an asset, residential is an asset. So how can we do all of these things and do them well? And how can we combine them in a way that adds value? And so that's, I see, 5 years from now doing more mixed use real estate development. And either the medical portion is the foundation and that breeds residential, retail, or any one of those can be the foundation and breed the rest. And that's where I'd like to branch out. And so I've done each one of those components individually and then developing enough expertise to kind of add them sensibly.
Sure. So as you guys are continuing to develop, and obviously, in the commercial development, scope and industry, there's a lot of people that are involved, whether it's architects, engineers, consultants, general contractors, subcontractors. How do you guys go about choosing the right partner or, sub to hire or consultant to hire? What's that process look like for you guys?
Yeah. And so, we're pretty early on. We've, completed probably 7 or 8 projects and have, many more in the pipeline. But we really kind of have to partner with, contractors and stuff that are maybe a little bit different than others in that we aren't sending out RFPs. We're partnering with a contractor, an engineer, all of these people early on, and we're choosing people we trust and that we have some experience with, and then trusting them to help us get through the process, right? That's one thing that's very different about us, is that we have to move forward being able to trust our partners.
Sure.
And certainly we want to branch out, right? And so each new project, bringing in somebody new that we haven't worked with is a big risk for us, more so than a pure development company. As I mentioned, my transaction with Craig Usler, he knew every single detail of that project. He knew every contract, every single point had been negotiated by him. And that's impressive. But for me, real estate is still a side gig, really. Sure. And so for me to do that, I need to have development partners that I can trust and rely on. And so we've got, a list of people that we've been working with and certainly are always looking to expand that. But we have to go into this saying, we're going to go with people that we know that we can trust. And for me, what's important is that I need a guy that I can call, right, on the weekend and I'm going to get a response, right? I can't, we've been approached by maybe some big national developers. And if I'm never going to see the face of the person whose name is on the sign, that's never going to work for me. Right. And then we've also been approached by some, brand new developers or contractors. And I'm going to say, well, that's not really going to work for me either because, although you might be amazing, I need some track record. Right. And I think that's kind of been our special sauce, is just finding the right partners. And I think there's probably, many more people that we'd love to partner with. Sure. And I think each project we're kind of looking, we say, all right, who can help us with this project? And so, I think I had reached out to you and I said, all right, well, I got to find a project for us to do together. Right. And so that's, we're starting, a little bit more on the residential side, a little bit more on the retail side right now. We're seeing there's definitely been a pause in the medical office side. And so we're saying, well, what else can we fit in, try our hands at to figure this out? So,
right. What's something new happening in your life?
Something new in my life. Well, I think the newest thing is I started playing pickleball.
Yeah.
And
then you had to stop.
well, that's an interesting part of it, right? So I tore my Achilles. So I was playing pickleball. I played pickleball on a Sunday in a tournament. And I thought, myself and my friends, we thought we were way better than we were. So we got destroyed in that tournament. Yeah. And so we said, guys, we got to practice more. So we played on a Monday, played after operating, played on a Wednesday, tore my Achilles on a Wednesday. I drove myself home. I operated on Thursday with a torn Achilles. Barely, I couldn't move my foot, so I had to sit down and operate. And then I had surgery on Friday. Then on Monday, I operated. On Wednesday, a week after my torn Achilles, I was back to playing pickleball.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So obviously, I had a very good surgeon.
Yeah.
But I was playing. I found this peg leg thing on Amazon because my foot was in a cast. So I was playing on a peg leg.
Right.
Literally a peg leg.
Stationary. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I could move, but very slowly and very cautiously. So I haven't missed a week of pickleball since I tore my Achilles.
You must have had Tiger Woods as a surgeon.
I had an amazing surgeon. I'd be happy to sing her praises. But so it's been interesting. Pickleball is kind of funny because when I come home from work, my wife's like, "Oh, you've been at work so much, and you're always doing all this stuff." And I'm like, "Well, at least I don't play golf, right? People go and play golf. They're gone for 3 or 4 hours, and at least I don't play golf. I don't play video games." And my wife's like, "Yeah, that's good, But now, unfortunately, I started playing pickleball, and something about pickleball is an addiction. So actually,
it's a new vice.
It's a new vice, yeah, and it's great though. Physically, I've lost weight. I feel healthier. It's important, obviously, to take care of yourself physically. And so that's been my physical health. I actually just built out a indoor pickleball club.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, that's how far the addiction goes.
There you go. All right. Last question. If you had to ask or tell God anything, what would it be?
Yeah, I think what I would probably ask is, am I doing the right stuff? Have I been a good person?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would tell him anything. I assume God probably knows everything already.
Right.
So I think that would really be it. Am I doing it right?
Right.
Hopefully I'd be asking him before I'm, meeting him.
Right. That way you can fix some little things.
Yeah. Okay. What should I do a little differently? What can I do differently?
Right.
So.
Well, we'll wrap up, man. I really appreciate your time. It's been a great, very conversational. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing. Like I said, I mean, when I first reached out to you about what you guys are doing, you're like, well, we're not like super, into development full time, but I think it's really impressive. I really like the products that you guys put out. It's very admirable how bullish you guys are in the space. And then kind of the strategic advantage that you guys are setting yourself apart from. So appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. So
I appreciate you having me. This
awesome.
is an amazing experience. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Beyond the Blueprint, this has been a great interview with Ravi Gandhi at Virax Holdings.
Yes, sir.
So make sure you like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. We will see you next time. Thanks. See you soon.